If you're trying to grow in commercial insurance, I want to give you a piece of advice that never fails. Buyers love mastery. They want to pick the one best, the one obvious choice, not one of a million. You'll have such a hard time standing out if you sound just like everybody else. But how do you get there? How do you actually sound like the obvious choice for your prospective clients? And the answer is, you have to have mastery. You have to niche down. You have to sound different from everybody else. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to do that, how to stand out from your competition so you actually win more deals. Now, all of this comes out of my own personal life. There's a lot of people that teach it, and they've learned it the hard way too. I learned everything the hard way. Early in my career, I tried to be a generalist, and I had an awful close ratio. I think at one point in time, I counted it out, and I was 1 for 40. And I had to stop and pause and think, what am I doing wrong? I don't understand why I keep losing over and over again. And it sounded the same way every time. I would go through the process and I would quote and I'd pray. And I'd get to the end and the business owner would pat me on the shoulder and say, hey, you did a really great job, but it just wasn't enough to change. And that didn't change for me until I started to niche down. And I started to find a space where there wasn't as much competition, where I could sound different and I could sound more like the obvious choice. And for me, it started with children's homes. And I got really, really lucky on the first deal. I did everything wrong and still won. That's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes we just get really lucky in life. But after I won the first big one, I thought to myself, okay, I did this right. I got something here. It's my first really large account. I think I can do this again. And so I wrote a second children's home and a third children's home. And then that spun off into something much larger, which is I focused on social services and understanding how to do one residential program conveyed into another one. And over time, having done that over and over again, I've realized that there's 3 components to having mastery over a niche. And that's what I'm going to share with you. It's you got to know the business, you have to know the coverages they need, and you have to know the marketplace. When people hire an insurance broker, they're hiring someone to help them buy insurance. And those are the 3 components. So first, let's talk about knowing the business, because in my opinion, everything flows out of knowing the business. If you can know what your customer does and how to articulate it, people can help you put the right solution there. But if you don't know what they do, nobody can help. So I'm going to break down the components of a business based on a financial statement, because that's how I think about it, and that's how I would encourage you to think about it. And then I'm going to relay it through one of my specialties, one of my industries that I focus on all the time: service providers for the intellectually and developmentally disabled. So when you look at a business's financial statement, and I recommend that you have some basics in accounting. Just know what it looks like on a financial statement, both for an income statement and a balance sheet, because that's what owners look at. If you want to appeal to owners, you need to think like an owner. They are thinking about and they're looking at their revenues, which is how much money they generate. They're looking at their expenses. That's how much money they spend. And their profit margin is revenues minus expenses. So keep that in mind. The next thing, the balance sheet shows assets, what they own, and liabilities, what they owe. And if you subtract assets, you subtract liabilities from assets, you get equity. Equity is what builds wealth for an owner. So what does an owner think about? They think about their profit margin, which is revenues minus expenses, and they think about their equity, which is assets minus liabilities. If you want to speak their love language, talk about profit margins and talk about equity. That's what they want to talk about. So for a service provider for the intellectually and developmentally disabled, they typically have 5 different programs. It's going to be in-home support, group homes, respite care, community development, and adult day programming. It seems like every time I go to talk to a service provider, what they do breaks down into one of those 5 programs. Now, the percentages of what they do can vary from program to program. One is going to be heavier in group homes. Another is going to be heavier in community development. Another is going to be heavier in respite care program or in-home support. You get the idea. And so understanding which program generates their revenue is going to tell you about that specific business. And most all of them generate their money from either the state or from Medicaid, which means they're very compliance focused, because if they don't make the state happy, they don't get paid, which means they want to follow the rules and they want to make sure that they are meeting the insurance requirements so the state will cut them a check. Very important to them. So those are the basics of that business that I serve. They're asset light. They don't tend to own buildings unless they run group homes. Sometimes they'll own buildings then. Usually their biggest asset is a vehicle or a fleet of vehicles, but they tend to be asset light, and they tend to be very, very focused on their caregivers because that is their bread and butter. That's what's going to dictate the success of their business. Their caregivers. It's also their number one expense. So knowing that about the business, when I walk into a conversation with them, I already have a good idea on where it should go and what I'm dealing with. And now all I'm trying to do is figure out the difference from one program to the next. So now that I know that part of the business, if I want to know what coverages they need, and this is part 2, knowing the coverages, the best way to learn the coverages is to go talk to an underwriter and ask them what coverages they need. Because underwriters are experts in coverages. Now, they may hedge, right? They'll say, well, they got to make their own decisions, and I can't make that decision for them. That's not what you're asking them to do. You're asking them, in an ideal world, what are all the coverages they need? Walk me through the nuances of the product that I need to understand so that I'm structuring this correctly. So for a service provider for the intellectually and developmentally disabled, they may talk you through a few things like they might have permanently attached equipment to their vehicles. You got to think about that. They may say, hey, look, the level of care is going to indicate what the professional liability premium is going to come out at, because professional liability and abuse and molestation liability insurance is largely based off of the type of services you provide and the people you have on staff. So the services that they have and the level of care that they have and the type of people that they're working at is going to impact how much they pay for professional liability. And they'll walk you through that. They'll say you got to be careful. If they do for some reason have a doctor, you got to understand there's limitations in the professional liability. You got to understand that if there's more nurses, that's going to carry a higher premium charge. They're going to tell you on the crime side, they're going to say if one of those caregivers is providing in-home support services and steals money or jewelry from the family, that is a crime exposure. That's theft of client's property. So they can walk you through the nuances of the insurance coverages as long as you can tell them exactly what it is the business does. Then the underwriter can give you the underwriting piece. Now the third part that you need to understand is the marketplace. You need to know who the best companies are. You need to know how to get their attention and how to get them to come to the table with the best terms. And the people that can really help you with that hopefully are going to be senior agents in that space. They should be able to rattle it off for you and tell you who the key carriers are. Now, if for some reason you don't have that at your disposal, wholesalers are a great resource. They tend to know, or in a roundabout sort of way, underwriters know. And underwriters know because they know who they lose to. They know when they win a deal and they know when they lose a deal. And if you can get them talking, they'll tell you all of that. They'll give you the marketplace intelligence that you need, but they're going to do it under the auspice of they're trying to equip you to go win deals for them. So just keep that in mind, is that if they're going to lean into you, it's because they're hoping that you are going to bring them deals that they can win. So those are the 3 parts if you want to master a niche. You have to know the business that you're dealing with, you have to know the coverages that industry needs, and you need to know the marketplace. And if you can talk through those 3 things with the client, they're going to feel like you are one of them. You are going to feel like the obvious choice, and it's going to give you so much confidence in a meeting. And the great part is a lot of this stuff you can do on the back end without needing to experience in front of a client. All right, if that helps, click like, subscribe, drop a comment about what niche you're working on in the comments section. All that helps people find the content. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or my contact information is at insuranceforentrepreneurs.net. And as always, please go build something great.